the pledges?
Of course.
So if you would, please stand.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that we can gather together here again tonight, and we had the freedom to do that, and to make decisions for our city and for our citizens. And we hope that you'll guide us in those decisions, that we can make the best ones possible for our citizens. Dear Lord, we're so grateful for the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us, and we thank you so much for our military people, men and women who have served and died and to protect our freedoms to be able to be here. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and is the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Carla, would you please call the roll? Here.
Chairperson Bragg.
Here.
Commissioner Sykes.
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Commissioner Randall.
Here.
All present.
Next is agenda approval. If there are any items that do not meet the approval for being heard on this evening's agenda, now is the time to remove those items. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as given.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve tonight's agenda as given.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Down to business item A, 2020 capital request outdoor recreation, manufacturing, and retail facility development. Mr. Mayor, if you'd get us kicked off on this, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, Commission. Thank you.
Excuse me.
As everybody knows, the New Mexico legislature has just gone into session for a 30-day session. Back in September, we submitted our capital improvement request, but with some recent discussions between the city and the governor's office, the possibility for some other funding has come to our attention, if you will. What is on the business item tonight is one idea for the development of a outdoor recreation, manufacturing, and retail facility that would be located in Riverside Park. This facility would hopefully attract some long-term businesses, both on the retail side as well as the manufacturing. The location that has been identified in Riverside for this particular project, it would be the parking area on the north side of the park, the large dirt parking area. Staff has done some preliminary investigation, I guess, if you will, as to whether it's suitable or not. Did a little bit of geo-testing down there by a local company. It is suitable for a project like this. With the conditions down there for building would, we'd have to bring in some engineered fill, things like that, but it's possible. Having said that about this particular project, that is just one idea that we have discussed recently, and Mr. Saavedra with Community Development will talk about some other possibilities. Mayor, you want to add anything to that at this point?
Just briefly, and I know this is an idea to have kind of this, as far as the timing of it, and all I can say is, it wasn't intentional to do it this way. It's just kind of the way, partly on my end, where I misunderstood whether this would be considered a capital outlay project or more of an appropriations type of project. And quite honestly, in between talking with some folks in Santa Fe, meeting with the city manager some and the city planner, and then as we kind of got towards, the final submission of the ICIP, the finance director had some questions, and then we decided to go ahead and submit it as a capital outlay project. And consistent with what some of the governor's staff had told me, that it could in fact be submitted as a capital outlay project. And just a little bit of background. We are obviously looking always to diversify our economy. I feel like this is kind of a long-range opportunity to look at diversifying our economy in the outdoor rec space, because the other communities in this region are certainly looking to do that as well. Farmington just got awarded the Outdoor Economic Conference for 2020 that's in October, and they're definitely going to be highlighting their outdoor recreation opportunities. And I feel like Aztec should not be caught in a position to where we're trying to play catch up, or that we have lost that window of opportunity to kind of get in on that, for lack of a better way to put it. There's enthusiastic support from Director Navis with the Outdoor Recreation Department in Santa Fe. She's relatively new, but she's under economic development in that department overall, and her boss is also enthusiastic about the possibilities of us doing something like this. And I think it's a great opportunity to at least try, and that's really what it boils down to. I think it's an opportunity to try. There's no guarantees that we will receive funding, but I think that timing is everything in some cases, and we should take advantage of it and give it a shot. And I know this may not be the perfect way that we've done it as far as some of the timing things, and I apologize for that. But ultimately, I think we need to give our best shot, and I think this is part of it. So, with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cerveja to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. Well, a lot. Thanks, sir.
Mayor, City Commission. If there's a lot of blanks and a lot of grilling that needs to take place, I might as well pull up a seat and then just go from there. So, but basically what I want to do is kind of work backwards and explain the concept and then go through specific sites. I know Riverside was mentioned as a potential spot. And I want to kind of go through that, break that down a little bit more in terms of pros and cons with every spot that we've identified thus far to see how likely it is. But that being said, so the idea of this facility, basically San Juan County doesn't have a building devoted for outdoor recreation to the best of my knowledge. And the construction of this facility would be the first kind in San Juan County. Now I know it's an ambitious project, especially for a community this size. However, if we are going to be looking at expanding economic opportunities within this area, diversifying the economy, the concept was made with, well, how about we try to combine the two, outdoor recreation and economic development. But in addition to that, at least it is my position that this facility can coexist, so we can combine the natural environment with the built environment, and the built environment would be the structure. As a result, there is the possibility that new businesses could come about and new jobs can arise. And the reason why I want to kind of step back a little bit is for years, the former mayor, Mayor Burbridge, was adamant about searching for a facility for Jack's Plastic Welding Shop. He has a good problem on his hands. He doesn't have enough space, and as a result, he's unable to fill a lot of orders, so business is hindered. He's not able to hire as many people that he wants, and so Mayor Burbridge was always searching for another facility that could suit his needs. Unfortunately, there was always one roadblock after another. And so when we were exploring this a little bit more, our fear was that what happens if Jack's Plastic ends up leaving Aztec? What would that do to not only our economy, but just the overall face of Aztec? So that was one of our big motivation drivers in trying to explore and thinking outside of the box. At that time, we were looking at what type of opportunities do we have in Aztec that would fit the needs of a Jack's Plastic Welding Shop. And I'm just going to use that as a catch-all term. It doesn't have to be a Jack's Plastic, but that's kind of what started this whole process. So we don't have a lot of land that is suitable for development, at least from the city standpoint. Where we have large chunks of property is the park. And when we explored different areas, we looked at, well, what is even feasible? Because if you're going to develop a structure, you need basic infrastructure, water, sewer lines, electric, and so forth. And we don't have a lot of that. And Riverside seemed to be ideal because there was water lines, there was sewer lines. There was a spot that was actually located outside of the floodplain that would be suitable. Now, the park, Riverside, doesn't necessarily mean that would be an ideal spot for this. Where we started exploring other opportunities, we would have to go out and purchase property. And because budgets are so tight, well, that's just another barrier that would get in our way. But because now the state has a little bit more flexibility because of the cash flow, this opens up the doors, and maybe Riverside could be put off the table, and we could look at acquiring property to build and construct a facility of this sort. So some properties that I'll just briefly mention is, though it is in the floodplain, there's 20 acres just outside of Aztec, or just across Aztec Boulevard, right next to the Mercy Medical Facility. That could possibly be a spot where you have a structure up top and then all that open space in the back, which again, if you're looking at the built environment and then you're looking at the natural environment, those two coexist. The other spot could be right here next to O'Reilly's. And that's in our MRA. But with those two spots, we would have to acquire property, so that's an additional cost. And why Riverside is advantageous is we don't have to add that barrier. But there is some other complications that happen with Riverside. So that's where we are on this concept, this idea. This is about diversifying our economy. This is about creating jobs. Outdoor recreation has been an initiative of not only San Juan County, but the city of Farmington and the city of Aztec. And so this would fit that gap so that Jack's Plastic or the likes of Jack's Plastic wouldn't have to relocate to the city of Farmington. And we're looking at our GRT numbers and we're looking at our manufacturing numbers and wondering why they're so down. Well, they're gonna be down even a little bit more because if a company like that relocates, that's a loss to us all. And the other thing about that is, look, we're not looking just to try to entice individuals to come here, but we're also trying to create an environment so that the businesses that are already here would have a place to grow. So with that being said, I will answer any question. I'll pull up a seat if you need to grill me, and I'll be happy to do that.
Mayor?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
guess I'll jump in first.
Sure,
I have quite a few problems with this. Sorry, Stephen. So, a project of this magnitude, even though I appreciate trying to get capital outlay funds, but a project of this magnitude, there's no way that we should not have had a workshop on it or some heads up on this to just have to do a last minute, and I know the mayor explained some of that, and so did Steve, but this is a huge project, and it involves one of our premier parks. You know, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars down there getting that park to the shape it's in now, and it's listed on one of our park plans, on our park plan, and I believe at some point the public had some input about what was going down there and stuff. I can't remember exactly when, but, and I have a big concern that a manufacturing and retail, I mean, I'm all for trying to get businesses into town, but you put manufacturing and retail down there, it's not gonna be a public park anymore, in my mind. Because we have buses that go down there, we have, you know, there's soccer games down there, there's, and it's become a jewel in our community, that park has. And so, I have a lot of heartburn over that. The other thing that I worry about is with this capital outlay, and it lists Riverside, so are we locked into Riverside then, if we get that money?
No, it hasn't been submitted.
No, I know, but if we vote on it and it's submitted, and it lists Riverside as the place where it's gonna go in the staff summary, does that mean that there's no other options? That, I believe that's right, right Kathy?
Yes.
So we would be locked into Riverside. There would be no option to look at other areas. So that's another thing to consider, and then, of course, I worry about the floodplain down there in Riverside, because any of us that have lived here very long have seen that flood before. I don't know, to me, I just really, I would almost rather see us search for more money to do more with the North Main extension. You know, a project that we're already working on and we've got the funds in. I have a big concern about putting manufacturing and retail down there in that park when we've made it such a pristine, beautiful park for all of us to use. And it's used a lot. So that's where I'm coming from.
Sure. So I'm going to get into, and I'm not going to, argue or debate the concerns at all. I think just stepping back, what we learned initially when capital outlay was being proposed months ago, a plan, how feasible this was not a concept for capital outlay. However, what we learned in Santa Fe is that if we would have conditioned the plan, construction, programming, and so forth, that could have been part of the whole capital outlay package. And I think that's kind of where some of the issues came about. That's just new information that we learned along the way. To your respect, I think those are definitely valid concerns. It is a park, and if you put manufacturing and retail, absolutely that will change the idea and the concept of Riverside. However, the only thing that I look at right now is with respect to Riverside, that dirt parking lot is conducive for a lot of things, and not just a parking lot, or not just a dirt lot as it stands today. And the idea was not to compete with the park, but actually to complement the park. So when Riverside was brought up as a possibility, and you have, let's just say, the likes of a Jack's Plastic or a fly rod manufacturer or anything of those likes, could you not add the retail that would complement the park so that the business could utilize the river to showcase the rafts? Or a possibility that the businesses would offer services so that people could utilize the park to a better extent. So that was something, but it's a valid point. I mean, I can't argue with that. It will change the look of it. And I know we don't have a rendering of it, of what it could look like. I'm not, biased towards Riverside or any other project. I think that is just the most compatible for a development project. It is outside of the floodplain, so that wouldn't be a necessarily concern with this structure, but that's not to say it can't get flooded. The floodplain doesn't actually go fully extend into that dirt lot. The issue, however, that may be is that there is a gas well, and there's also power lines. And so the building itself would have to be positioned so that it wouldn't be too close to the well, unless a variance is given for that, and it can't be under the power lines. And so it has to be configured in a way that meets all the safety requirements. So that is another concern as well. I think North Main is another viable option. We're doing some work there and manufacturing, if we were to acquire a piece of property, so the Chafee property, for example. If that was an option, then could we not purchase that property and then start utilizing it for the development of this type of facility that would support outdoor recreation? So I think that's a great point too.
Like I said, I'm concerned locking us into Riverside, so.
Mayor Pro
but
Tem?
thank you.
You've mentioned these other options, but we're saying we're locked in. I don't understand why we're locked in if
What can we do
you're
with that language?
offering options.
Well, I think we would need to amend what would be voted on as far as what's captured in the staff summary here.
Okay.
The title of it is Capital Request for Outdoor Recreation Manufacturing and Retail Facility Development.
Right.
So that could be amended to address Main Street or the property on the side, or
Because I just don't feel like we have enough research or information to say we're going to do this
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, Austin
So-
was just mentioning,
Just pulled out.
and I think Kathy and I talked about this, and, kind of briefly, I think I talked to Steve, is that something that we can be less specific about, I guess, and still meet what we need? to give us the option, I guess, basically.
We could eliminate the language as to the specificity of the location. I can tell you that one of the things that not necessarily the legislature may be looking at it, but if funding is granted, DFA will be looking at if we actually own property or not. And so that, depending on how the language in the bill is crafted, we would need to say that we're going to use part of that money to acquire property, which that isn't necessarily included when you say plan. So we would have to amend what that language is to make sure that it's within the chapter bill to allow us to do that.
Okay.
So I got a question for Kathy. So when we put our capital outlay requests for the arterial project, we didn't own all the property. We had to go back and that's what we're doing now, is still seeking acquisition of property to build it, correct?
True, but we own the majority of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and we aren't using any of those capital outlay requests for acquisition. They're currently all worded for construction only. We're not using any of those funds for design or plan. So the biggest thing is just, the language that on the capital outlay request that's attached with the staff summary, where it talks to plan, design, and construct. That's the language that will be included in the bill. And so if we want that funding to be able to use to acquire property, that language needs to be expanded to that effect. And then in the scope of work, of course, then we want to back away from being so specific as to a location.
I have a question about that as well. I mean, I think if you take it one step farther and say you're not gonna do Riverside Park, but yet we're gonna acquire property, right? So, I mean, if you say we're gonna acquire property, it's gonna have to be pretty vague, because, I mean, how do we know some guy's gonna sell us a piece of property? You know what I mean? So,
Right.
I mean, if you're looking at the brief project description where it says plan, design, construct, and furnish outdoor recreation developments facility in Aztec, New Mexico, I mean, you could put plan, desire, construct, acquire, or possibly acquire and furnish outdoor. I mean, you could toss that in there, and I don't know necessarily, I think you could craft some language within the scope of work as to the acquisition or the use of city property already. Does that make sense? Kind of leave that door open a little bit, but once they look at their request, I don't know how that would weigh on their request either.
I don't, it's really hard, because if this was a normal year where there wasn't a lot of extra funds, I would say this would be one they wouldn't even consider.
Right.
But where there's a surplus of funds,
Who knows?
I don't know what they might
Well,
look at.
and I think they're looking at our area, San Juan County in particular, of helping us to diversify our economy. So we've got a plus side to potential funds, because they know we're hurting up here, and so I think if it can be worded so we have some options here.
Yeah.
And I know
We could work on that
this
a little bit,
last minute situation it's bothersome to me too, but man, they got some money and we could use it. And if the wording can approach what we feel comfortable with, then we should give it a shot. We don't want everybody around us to get ahead of us. They'll keep driving to Durango. Farmington's on high speed for recreation, because I go to the Four Corners Economic Development, and they're busy and they're doing things. We've got to meet that and catch up. And so, if we can word it, I just
And keep in
would love
mind,
to take that
you know,
opportunity.
Again, this is just to put it on capital outlay. There's no guarantee that we're gonna get
Oh,
this at
sure.
all. We have, I think, a rec center that's 14 million, and there hasn't been really any design, construction material. It's, there's a lot of gaps in that one too. It's not to say that that one's not gonna get funded and this one will get funded, or vice versa. It's just to get it on capital outlay, to give us a shot. I would, be hesitant to say if this was coming out of the city's budget, this would be very ambitious and not likely. But if the state has money and they're willing to consider ideas like this, and I know that the director of outdoor rec has frequent this area and has noticed how advantageous this area is for outdoor recreation,
Right.
and has offered the support of her department, I think at least it's worth exploring. And again, it doesn't have, I'm not biased on Riverside. I have my own personal bias, and I have a particular spot that I like, but it's just to see what would be conducive and what would be good for Aztec overall. When we're looking at the economy, when we're looking at outdoor recreation, you know, it could be a list of a lot of things. And one thing I needed to say is I had a brief conversation with Judy Castleberry of San Juan College. So this facility is not a hub. It's not designed to be that. Because we're not going to compete with the college. We learned some valuable lessons with the hub, and our conversation basically consisted of they have their accelerator program where they get people to learn the ropes of manufacturing or how to do a business, and she suggested that the college would be the pipeline to this facility, similar to what a college would have a nursing program, and then a hospital would be able to hire those employees. So that's how that conversation consisted of, very briefly, but there is some real advantages of having this within our area with current times.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the main concerns that came up to my head immediately was it sounded very familiar to the hub.
Right.
Like where it's a city-owned building on city property, and we have tenants. But on the flip side, I mean, to me, like instantly I thought either Jack's Plastic Welding or even like you said, the fly shop. That's exactly what I was thinking, where you can go out to the river, try it out, bring it back. And I do have concerns it being next to the park too, but it's like as far as like a visual concern, I mean, it's an ugly well site as soon as you pull into the park anyway. And even on our parks plan, because I did look at that too, even on our parks plan, the bummer of it is it still shows up on our parks plan as vacant dirt lot. You know, it's what it's like. So done right, I think Riverside could still work great, so I don't want to rule it out either in the language, but again, I don't want to tie us to that
Right.
either, just in
Right.
case
Yeah.
we can do something else.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm also, I mean, I could go both ways.
I think that would be a good approach personally.
Yeah,
I do
I'm
too.
not against
Right.
not against
Just
going out
maybe
for the
money.
for the
Painting us into a
money
corner
or-
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't want to, because I do have those concerns, but I mean, and I think the outdoor recreation is a great,
Yeah.
and of course, we're always looking to bring jobs and stuff into. I just want to make sure that we protect the nice parks and stuff that we already have. We don't want to, and so I would be willing, I mean, I would be more in support of going out for this money if we don't just lock ourselves into Riverside.
Okay.
I think in the future too, we just need to be real careful on how, if we do get the funding, how the language is worded moving forward with someone, because it's in my head, I'm thinking like, so is it like they make Frisbees in this building, and then in the front they sell the Frisbees, and then they can play with them in the park. Just how it works going forward, we'll have to be real careful on how we word it, because we don't end up in situations like the hub where we're liable for all this stuff, and oh my gosh, Frisbees are dangerous, we can't have that, something happens. No, I'm just realistically.
No, I understand what you mean,
We just
yeah.
have to be real careful going forward, but yeah, asking for $6 million if you guys
It's a
if
lot
you have
of
a
money.
shot at it. It just stinks too, because the less specific you get, the less likely you are to get the money. In my mind, because like doing on, history doing the ICIP, usually the more specific you are, the better chance you have, they actually have a plan, but.
Right. And of course, this would be on the list. If it doesn't happen this year, there's a potential.
At least we
if
started it
we
somewhere.
start, and we're start moving towards
I
that.
agree.
And again, this really concept started with the likes of Jack's Plastic, where he's in a unique situation, and, I think everybody probably wants to do everything we can to support him in his efforts, and we obviously would probably be very upset if he left our area.
Right.
He does have a good problem. He is busy, and that's what we're hoping to take advantage of. And yeah, the concerns about the hub, trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So this would be this would be long term. It's not 2
Right.
years, 3 years. We're training you how to run a business. I mean, the college can do that. This is just providing that opportunity, very similar to an industrial park, where you create the space so that these industrial businesses can go in there. Logistically, they don't have any problem because all the infrastructure is there, and they do what they got to do, and it's a win for that. that park. But your concerns are valid. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong and things of that
Yeah,
nature.
well, and there's a lot of land, even though it's not ours, along what we want to develop down there in the North Main Extension, and that it's got close to the river, it's
Right.
got, so, I mean, anyway.
And one of the properties that I'm biased on is across Aztec Boulevard. It's at 20 acres. That's currently for sale. It is in the floodplain. Why I look at that as being very advantageous is that it has the space to construct a structure. And then you have all that open space in the back that you really can't build anything in it because it is deep in the floodplain. But that could possibly open up opportunities for trail systems. So when we look at Townsend, connecting Townsend to Riverside, and I know that's part of the park plan. And now you could potentially connect Riverside to this area, which would connect to North Main, which would connect to the ruins. And so when you're talking about outdoor recreation, if, somebody is not into necessarily rafts or fly fishing or whatever, they have the opportunity to walk this area, take their kids out on a stroller, so it's a longer trail. So, that's my bias, but, at this point, we're just looking to see what would work with our limitations.
Who's gonna write up the? Tonight, right? We need to make a motion with the revisions right now.
Right, and I think along those lines, something to the effect, move to approve the submittal of a 2020 capital request to the New Mexico legislature for the development, well, we probably, to what Tyson was talking about earlier, add something about acquisition.
Development, acquisition.
Acquisition and development, or something along the lines of acquiring property. And then for the development of an outdoor recreation, manufacturing, and retail facility, and with the value attached, or with the sum of $6 million attached.
So
The-
just question, I mean, if we're doing a brief project description, I mean, ultimately, the project that we're doing is we're planning, designing, constructing, and furnishing an outdoor recreation development facility in the city of Aztec. The scope of work, though, I think may be changed as far as, I think the overall idea of the project remains the same whether we own the property or not. But the description or the scope of the work would, this is what I would just toss out there, and you guys can change it however you want. The city of Aztec will construct a facility on city-owned or acquired property in Aztec, New Mexico, and San Juan County, creating manufacturing and retailing and retail opportunity for outdoor recreation, etc.
Okay.
And that portion would be put on the capital outlay request itself. But to make the motion, or the recommendation tonight from the commission needs to be along those lines, but broad, not specific to one location.
Which is what?
Right, so is
Which
it
is what you
existing?
said.
Which you
Right.
took out
Right.
Riverside. over
Yeah,
there.
so we put existing,
That-
like, on existing city-owned or
Or
acquired.
Or acquired, yeah.
property, city-owned or acquired property.
In the motion or in
Yeah,
this?
in the motion.
Okay,
Well, not,
okay.
we're even just, I mean, I think you're gonna have to make the motion to approve.
Kind of
the-
reflect the,
Right, the request, but I
Right.
think straight in the request, all we gotta do is clean up two sentences, and I think you guys can get there.
Here's the proposed
Just put like
motion.
amending scope of work.
Yeah.
So you said,
Facility
City-owned or acquired property.
In city-owned or acquired property
okay.
in the amount of
of-
$6 million.
Right.
Yes, Steve, I'm sorry about that, I was a little confused at that point, but I agree with that for the motion.
So can I take a shot at just like a draft?
sure, yeah, I think we should definitely just get the city clerk's opinion on.
Okay, so we start out and say, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the submittal of a 2020 capital request to the New Mexico legislature for the development of an outdoor recreational manufacturing and retail facility on city-owned or acquired property in the amount of $6 million. Is that, Carla, does that cover it, or?
I,
Should it say within the city limits or the city
Well, city-owned.
City-owned or acquired.
City-owned
Or acquired
Huh?
city property.
City-owned or acquired property,
Would it be property to be acquired?
Or property to,
okay, okay.
I think,
City-owned or
Okay,
property.
yeah, I see that,
Or-
your point,
or
or property to be acquired.
Okay, or property to.
Is it necessary to say within the city limits of Aztec, within city limits, is that what your point was?
So I was just going to briefly say, and take it for what it's worth, when I was initially breaking down the numbers, especially for acquisition of property, I added a little bit more money, so it came out to 7.2 million if we were to acquire property. That doesn't have to be the case, you know.
I'll say
that's-
then.
I just, you know,
Could ask for the
I don't-
moon. No, so do we want to increase the,
but that's all speculative right now. I mean, I think 6 million is sufficient.
Okay.
You know, when we would look at property, if we were to acquire it, obviously we would have to do an appraisal. And
Right.
so what the valuation is currently listed may not be what it's actually worth.
right?
But
Okay.
that was just to provide a
Okay.
little bit of cushion in case something happened. But
Okay.
6 million.
So do we still want to leave it at 6 then? I mean, I think that's a,
Anybody wanna
that's a chunk of
Add to
change.
that?
that sounds like.
That is a
lot of
chunk of
money.
change. It is a lot of money.
Yeah.
It is a lot of money.
In the motion, do we have to amend the scope of work from the summary?
I think you would amend
We would amend it once we send it to the state.
Right, but
So-
because your motion would be, this is what we want to do, and
Okay.
then
Right.
you would change.
Yeah,
your
and then
We would
before it
change the
goes up to the
request.
It's not
state.
tied to
reflect.
the.
Right,
To
Okay, I
reflect
just want
the
to make sure.
motion.
That-
Right.
That's the way I understand it, and correct
that's
me
the
if
way I
I'm wrong.
understand it too.
Okay. So I'm going to amend my motion, I guess, to, just the rewording. So I'd like to move to approve the submittal of a 2020 capital request to the New Mexico Legislature for the development of an outdoor recreation, manufacturing, and retail facility on city-owned or property to be acquired in the city of Aztec in the amount of $6 million. Aztec, New Mexico, in the amount of $6 million. Does that satisfy everybody's?
I think so.
Second.
Kathy, you kind of looking a little,
No.
Are you making the motion?
I'm okay, I guess. So
I said I moved, but.
What we were
Okay.
talking about is, what if, so right now we kind of have an idea for how this development would be, we're stating manufacturing and retail. What if that didn't happen?
I guess that would be more of a question for me. So you mean that if we built this facility and nobody came to occupy it?
Well, or it's not, I don't know.
We sell the stuff, but we don't make it.
Yeah,
Or we make the stuff, and we don't sell it.
Exactly.
Or we put a sports facility on, I don't know. I mean, Chief, that was kind of pretty.
She's saying we're limiting ourselves.
I mean, what if
Recreational facility.
You could say
you
and.
build it and
Mhm.
someone wants to come in and rent it, that is not one of these specific ones? Do they have an option of doing that, or is the rental of that property restricted by
By those
the money
words.
that has come in? And it may not, it may have nothing to do with it, I just,
It would, in theory, be restricted to that particular use.
No, that's a good point.
Could we say and or? Thanks to our attorney. Instead of just saying and? So it could be manufacturing or retail?
I believe we could say that. I thought my intent, and I'm not trying to paint us into too tight of a corner, but the intent is to have small-scale outdoor retail-based manufacturing with a retail component potentially for them. And that's the idea, is to bring small, like a Ross Reels or a Jack's Plastic, not a Ross Reels anymore, but, Ross Reels, Osprey started in, Cortez, and, now they have a design facility there in Cortez, and they manufacture overseas because they've gotten so big. I was in D.C. this week, and there's Osprey packs in every REI in the country, including D.C. So that'd be a great problem to have, to kind of launch a business like that. But our neighbors to the north have been doing this for years and years and years. You know, they've been, small municipalities have been making it possible for them to kind of take their garage, cottage type industry and, you know, grow it and move it into something bigger. I'm not opposed to giving us that little bit of option, you know, as far as the language necessity, but I think at the core, that's the idea behind it, is to try and attract small-scale outdoor recreation-based, you know, manufacturing.
They would be the preferred tenant.
For sure.
If,
Just add an or to it.
And/or.
But if adding or to it,
I think it gives you
and-
that little wiggle
Yeah,
room.
or,
and
yeah, I
I'm
think so too.
perfectly comfortable with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and those are both broad
think
terms.
Mr.
Manufacturing and retail are very
They
broad terms.
are broad terms.
They are very
So
broad
it's
terms,
not
so-
like we're boxing
Right,
ourselves
right.
into, you know, putting in a lumber yard, or, I mean, you know.
How do you feel, Mr. Vega, what were you going to say?
I do have concerns about that, is especially if we have outdoor recreation departments that are trying to support, you know, this type of use, and we leave it too vague, too broad. So does that mean any type of business goes in there? I'm not sure how likely they're gonna support, you know, that type of business. So for example, if you read back the language, it says retail, right? So what is retail? Retail of plates, retail of antiques goods?
Well, I think that goes with
It's
the outdoor recreation, manufacturing and/or retail. I think
Yeah.
your and/or and your out, that all relates back to the outdoor the outdoor,
Recreation.
yeah, recreational component of the language.
Okay, and that, yeah, then I'm good, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think once, if this were to happen, that we would be able to tailor it in such a way,
Outdoor recreation.
or, you know, through your department, to where we have the desired tenant, kind of like we're doing with North Main.
That's why that one's with the money.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment?
Mhm.
That we could, you know, gives us enough room to where we could still, it's easier to kind of tailor it down tighter later than it is to try and expand it later, I guess. I think that's the kind of presiding sentiment here.
yeah, and the tenants would be, the ones that would go in there, it would be done through a competitive process.
Right.
And we could do the
And we could
RFP or
set that-
whatever.
set
as
those
an
standards
outdoor- correct, set the
specifically,
stand-
yeah. Okay.
Mayor, I think Mr. Scott had a comment. He had his hand up earlier.
I don't know where the city limits boundaries are, but a possibility this facility could be built out on the bypass that you're wanting to develop, commercial and industrial and whatever, on the bypass, where you could take Steve Christensen's disastrous reservoir site up here, up near the water plants. That would be an ideal location for a large building.
I think we could be open to consider pretty much anything within the city limits to meet the needs of the scope of the project, and those are,
City limits, I
Yeah.
guess is my question.
of course.
It doesn't need to be within city limits. If some parcel was available just right outside the city limits, it could be acquired. You're limiting yourself to in the city limits.
Well, that's kind of in my opinion, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that's the whole idea, is to benefit the tax base in the city of Aztec specifically.
Parcel outside of the city limits, you could annex it.
Annex it.
But if it's strictly in the city limits, you can't.
That's also true. We could annex, but I think we've been talking about annex in one form or another for way before I moved here, and it still hasn't happened, and that's not really something that I have an appetite to tackle, at least not anytime soon. I mean, I understand your point of view. I mean, am I alone on that, or?
Well, we don't even have to, I mean, we don't have to say
We
in
don't have to
the,
say.
in
It's
the
an option.
Aztec city limits.
I
if
see
we're
what you're
doing
saying.
broad- If we're
Okay.
just doing a broad, we don't have to put that in there, so. Should we,
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I want to make sure we do this right.
Okay, so the legal language that appears in the agreements and will be in the bill does cite the location. So being in Aztec, in San Juan County would imply that that's where it's going to be constructed. Now, if we were to purchase property outside, yeah, we would have to annex that property to be in compliance then with the agreement.
But I think that's something we consider, back to his point. I mean, if there's this picture-perfect piece of land that that we say, oh man, this is perfect, this, and you guys decide that's where you wanna be, then you start the annexation process, see if it's even doable first, or move on to the next.
And I think those are all great ideas. I think my only concern would be, like, hey, you know, it's not inside Aztec, so that's more flexibility. Let's just put it in Farmington, for example. It's not specific, and that would be my concern, is that I think I would rather tailor it to Aztec. Annexation is a possibility, but that is a process in itself, and to my understanding, there's a time frame with capital outlay funds that have to be
Yeah, and
expended.
I feel like we're adding a little too many straws to the glass on that. That's just my opinion.
Well, and access to the river
Yeah.
is an important part of this, so.
I mean, to highlight the outdoor recreation opportunities that we have, I mean, because you could hypothetically say, well, what about that building that's at the turn by the Alien, you know? And that's, you know, that might be perfect for certain applications. But the idea is to keep it as close to what I think is our downtown district as possible, and to increase and improve traffic downtown, make it a destination for something like that, you know. And we keep saying Jack's Plastic Welding, it's not, you know, that type of small-scale manufacturing, I guess, and because that's such a good example is why we kind of keep going back to it. And that is what kind of inspired the whole idea in the first place, is talking with them. But talking with Director Niles, she's already said, you know, I have connections in other small-scale manufacturers in Durango area that are tired of paying Durango prices. So obviously, there's no guarantees with that. But with the support of the government agency and the director, I think that's going to help as well. And I met with Senator Heinrich's office yesterday for another item, and they're also advocating for it with their state director. So, yeah, I would like to kind of, just speaking for myself personally, I think we should try and focus on the city limits of Aztec. That's just my feeling.
Well, if we're gonna get the GRT and stuff too.
Right.
Yeah, that's the
Needs
point.
GRT.
And then to annex, it might turn into an ordeal, and we may not have to. It may not even turn into that, but I'd kind of like to target it and kind of keep it a little more focused, at least on that side. That's just my feeling.
Okay.
What do you
So,
guys think?
one more time, we've got a motion on the floor. So before I amend it again, so I'm going to add and/or retail facility, manufacturing and/or, right?
Right.
Okay, and we're still with the city-owned or property to be acquired. Is that correct? Has that got it all covered?
Yep.
Try one more time?
I think.
Okay, I'm going to amend my motion one more time.
Second amended motion.
So,
Yes.
I move to approve the submittal of a 2020 capital request to the New Mexico Legislature for the development of an outdoor recreation manufacturing and/or retail facility on city-owned or property to be acquired in Aztec, New Mexico, in the amount of $6 million.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry,
Aye.
Commissioner Sight,
Aye.
Commissioner Randall,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. That is it. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Commissioner Sipe, for wading through all the language. We don't have anything else on the agenda. We don't have any department head reports or anything, so I move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay.